Same old trouble, villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome to Graphically Novel, a special mid-season presentation.
Okay.
You know, we didn't talk about it beforehand. Are you driving since it's mid-season?
I have nothing prepped to drive.
Halfway through the season?
I got to be your joker.
Okay. Yep.
Well, hey, let's switch it up. How about if you introduce me, I'll introduce Bear, and then Bear can introduce our guest.
Excellent. Let's do that. Well, then, ladies and gentlemen, my poison ivy. The woman who puts plants up and down in my house, and one day will give me the poison kiss. It's the Baronessa, Jennifer Howland.
Oh, you can count on that. And this time around, I get to introduce our colleague, our brother-in-arms. It's Bear.
How's everybody doing? Thank you. And we have a plethora of guests for us with us today. We have Kat, who is one of our resident DC experts. She's been with us before.
I'm willing to be the oracle in this equation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes, definitely tune into the Birds of Prey or Wonder Woman episodes for more of Kat.
Absolutely.
And another veteran DC member.
Yes, so we have Mr. David Harnois.
Hey, it's me.
Who has been with us for
V for Vendetta.
Yes.
One of our longest and highest rated shows.
And dare I say, one of our best shows.
Well,
I helped.
I wonder how many people go looking for podcasts about V for Vendetta around the
could be
the 5th of November.
5th of November, and just I don't know.
I would like to think that the fans of V for Vendetta are a very special group of people.
Well, and perhaps after today, we will be on another special list that we've always been trying to get on, and that is the Snyder Bros. Hate list.
You mean we weren't after my Wonder Woman comments?
We possibly were. I haven't gotten any death threats, so
I didn't give them my Twitter handle so that I didn't get any death threats.
Well, there you go. And by the way, I was going to. I should have done it. I should have remembered. When I introduced you, I should have said, "She's not just a friend; she's a partner."
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, we will be doing Batman today, and the reason that it is a mid-season is this one could go long. This one could go way long. We have watched Batman 66, both the show and the movie.
Well, I mean, I didn't watch the movie, but I've seen it in my childhood over and over and over again.
Batman 89.
Yep.
Tim Burton. Batman 92. Batman Returns 92. Tim Burton
the whole
again.
Burton Schumacher.
Yep. Batman Forever 95. I don't know how many of us did, but I rewatched Batman and Robin.
I mean,
I did.
As far as it was on in the background while I was doing dishes because I couldn't stand to sit in front of it anymore. Like, dishes were more entertaining.
Then we have the Nolan trilogy. Mm-hmm. We have Batman Begins, Dark Knight Returns, and of course, the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman. So, that's a lot.
That's a ton.
Add on top of that, things open for discussion are the Arkham games, are the cartoons, the Batman animated series cartoons, which we introduced Bear to, so that will be exciting. Just basically a lot of Batman stuff. I mean, I'm always down to talk about Lego Batman, but
I didn't watch Lego Batman. Drat.
There you go. But
so good.
All things Batman. And so we're doing this ultra awesome edition. So let's also talk about the comics that people recommended. David, you want to tell us about Hush?
Oh, yeah. Hush. Hush
because you had a list. You had a very long list.
It was sort of word vomit of these are all good ones. Hush is one of the first Batman stories I read in before I really started getting into Batman and comics. And it's fun because so many of the rogues galleries show up in that story. I mean, pretty much everybody important is in there somewhere. But you also get more of the relationship between Bruce and Selina, which is great. Not to mention the sort of twist at the end of the Riddler realizing that answering his own riddle would spoil all his fun. And plus, I mean, you get a villain who it was one of the better new villains that got introduced into the Rogues Gallery, and Hush's whole storyline that goes through that. It goes through Batman Gotham Knights, detective, and then ultimately kind of concludes in the Streets of Gotham series they were doing during Batman Reborn. It's just a great read. It's, you know, and you get to stare at pretty Jim Lee artwork, which is never a bad thing. It's a hell of a story, and it's a great mystery too. I mean, especially if you want a story where Bruce is being a detective, that is definitely a story to read.
And I just made that connection. Why you might suggest that particular story arc.
Yes, what is it about Batman and perhaps some of your other hobbies that may lead you?
Well, it will inevitably come up at some point during this discussion, but I'm sure we are going to be discussing the merits of Batman actors, which is a discussion that has occurred several times in my other major interest, which is the world of Sherlock Holmes. And let me tell you, as much debate as there is here, especially among characters like Batman, there is as much, if not more, debate about people who have played Sherlock Holmes.
It's people that like I mean, it's people in general, fandom in general, but people that like detectives, because like Jenn is a huge fan of Poirot, and we went and saw the first anything. We went and saw the new Midnight on the Orient Express.
Murder on the
Orient Express.
Also not new.
Well, I mean the newest
the
movie.
Latest movie, yes.
And as we were walking out, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I've never actually read or seen anything, Agatha. And she like full stop, like, you have no idea who Poirot was before this movie?
Poirot. Yeah.
Poirot
is a...
Hercule?
Yeah.
I'll ride my donkey boy.
I remember going to see that movie in the theater when it came out with the girl I was dating at the time, and as soon as he popped up on screen for the first time, where you get to see his face, and I saw that amazing mustache. I just turned with this, my head snapped over with this giddy look, and all she said was, no, not happening.
I'm excited for Death on the Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Agatha Christie was another one. I read, probably half a dozen or so Agatha Christie stories when I was in middle school, because I just remember going to the library and going, oh, this looks fun. And I know I read 10 Little Indians. That one I remember distinctly, but there were a few more. But yeah, Agatha Christie's another one. Well, and Poirot, I mean, is one of those ones where you've only really had like one major interpretation of him.
Right,
and a couple other people who have done it.
Yeah, the BBC series was really well done.
Well, there was the Murder on the Orient Express from the 70s,
right?
With Maggie Smith.
Yep. But yeah, Agatha, that we're going so far afield.
Yeah.
But I have some dear friends who have a vacation home, and that vacation home has several bookcases. And the woman who filled the bookcases loved detective stories and mysteries. So every single thing that Agatha Christie ever published was in that library. So yeah, there were summers that all I did was read Agatha Christie from A to Z.
So bring it back to Hush. What did everybody think of Hush? Was it A, was it your first time reading it? And B, what, in this context of all things Batman?
I'd read it before, and I think I'm glad he suggested it, because if he hadn't, I probably would have. It's just quintessential Batman. I think it really nails exactly what he said. The rogues gallery, it gets that, like, it's not about beating the crap out of people, it's about figuring out the problem and why he's the world's greatest detective.
Fair?
Yeah, this was absolutely my first time reading it. I loved it, every page of it. And I don't know what else you can say besides exactly that. It is the quintessential detective story with lots of supervillains.
Jenn and I had watched the animated version of it, which cuts a significant amount of stuff out, but did a damn good job for keeping it. Again, DC
the one
animation.
Thing DC's consistent on
are
the animated movies, with like 2 or 3 that I hate, but otherwise, really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I watched Gotham by Gaslight last night.
I don't want to talk about Gotham by Gaslight.
And I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
I got so mad I almost walked out of my own living room.
I'm cool with most of the DC animation stuff as long as Batman isn't having sex with Barbara on top of her.
Oh, that one I also almost walked out of my own living room.
Yeah, that was bad.
So
how do you make the Killing Joke worse for Barbara Gordon?
Right?
The answer is Bruce Timm found a way.
Yep. Yeah. How do we make Alan Moore less palatable?
Yeah.
All right. So
I mean, he wrote a version of the Necronomicon.
yes, I know.
We could do that.
No.
We could do it as a bonus episode.
No.
Are you talking about the fish scene?
The fish scene?
If we're talking about the same book, Alan Moore, was it Neonomicon? Was that the one that he
I
did?
think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I was flipping through my Audible the other day, and I was just like, really? I might have to get that.
Because if it's the comic book I'm thinking of, there's a scene with a fish man, and I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I own Dagon on VHS. So, Kat, the book that you had suggested for us was Long Shadows.
Yeah, now for something completely different.
Right? All three of these are very completely different.
Yes. Long Shadows is partly because I'm a smartass, and you said Batman and not Bruce Wayne.
And
Right.
and I have to say thank you for that because I really enjoyed it.
I love Long Shadows.
I
and
thought it was great.
I have the TPB that follows it that is Batman and Robin.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think Long Shadows and that whole run of Dick being Batman really saved Damian Wayne as a character. Like, he went from this obnoxious kid to Dick Grayson was the right foil for him.
Right.
I would argue.
I would definitely agree with that.
I would argue in the same way. I really walked away, and I had read Hush before, but I was reading it for the first time in a long time. I had so much more respect for Tim Drake being, having gone through Hush, especially when you get to the part where he's like, you find out why Bruce took him in, and that he will one day be the world's greatest detective, and that's what Tim brings to the table. Whereas Jason just wanted to have the thrill and beat people up. Dick just had natural skill, and so it delineates the differences between them. And I think Long Shadows, definitely the same thing. Damian, in most of the things that you see him in, if you even know who Damian Wayne is, are like, oh, that's the kid that got raised by assassins and is Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul's son, and just goes and kills people. Like, it's always talking him down from killing people, whether it's injustice, whether it's like most of the very few animated or video game references to him. Like, he's an angry child.
And the problem is that they'd already kind of done that with Cassandra Cain. And
Right.
so it's like, especially for fans, it's like, this feels like we're just redoing what we've already done.
So, David, had you read Long Shadows before?
Yeah, I had read that stuff. When I came in to what was going on in the comics, I came in during Battle for the Cowl. So Bruce is
Directly
dead.
before this, yeah.
Yeah. So I played a big catch-up game to figure out what the hell was happening leading up to Battle for the Cowl. So that was stuff like Hush and Black Hand and Batman R.I.P. And but yeah, the first, as far as like ongoing series was, yeah, Dick was the one who was Batman when I started reading monthly books. And I mean, it's a great run because it's a lot of really good character study for Dick. And yeah, it makes Damian much less of a shithead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I go ahead.
Well, and it's just the respect that Dick and Damian end up having for each other is really nice to see. And I think it's helpful for both of them to ultimately have that other person to be with in the wake of Bruce, quote unquote, dying. Spoilers. But yeah, no, it's a great run, and a lot of really good stuff came out of that.
They both needed each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the other reason I picked it is because, not just because, well, it's Batman, not just Bruce Wayne, but it does a good job of showing the Bruce-shaped hole that was left when he died. And the fact that, like, Batman has to continue beyond him.
Yeah, the idea of legacy is huge in this book and awesome. And I think it encapsulates which we'll get into because I have it as a note, but what the Nolan movies kept dancing around and talking about, but not talking directly to over and over again, especially Dark Knight, especially the end of Dark Knight. This was a much better example because you have some people that are like, nobody should ever wear that cowl again. And then you have Dick going, Batman can't die. Right. Bruce Wayne might have died. Batman cannot die. It has to be a legacy thing. He has to always be there to really keep Gotham City in check.
It also has a great Jim Gordon moment where he's just like,
oh, yeah.
You're not him, but fuck it.
Yeah.
Well, it's because he's smiling. That's how they know.
Yeah.
But I mean, to that point too, you also get a little bit of that at the end of Arkham Knight. You know, Bruce blows the manor all to hell, but then you get that bit at the end where it's the guys in the alley, and it's like, oh god, it's even scarier Batman than the one we had before.
Right. Jen, what did you think of Long Shadows?
I enjoyed it, and I liked, especially the legacy part of it. And I did like how, there was a great deal more character development for Dick. Like he had to realize during that arc that it wasn't just about keeping the city safe. There were so many other facets to what Batman was and what Bruce Wayne represented as well. And I just, there was a lot more interpersonal between Dick and Alfred that I didn't expect, but was perfect for the story arc. And I really appreciated. And it also shone a spotlight on Alfred that, probably was far overdue for what he did in that franchise.
Really well done Batman stories take Alfred into account.
Yes, but
it's a lot of really not good Batman stories.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and also it's not it. I mean, yeah, he's a clever dude who's there cleaning up after the messes. But in this story arc, he's an active participant in what's going on.
Well, he's a father in mourning.
Yeah, and that too. But he's actually doing things, which, you kind of get the idea around the edges that he has been doing this all along, but that it wasn't a partnership. He was doing a task for Bruce. And in this, it's more like they're working together.
Yeah.
Fair? Oh, actually, before that, I just want to say the one thing I wanted to bring up with Long Shadows with Jen. This is one of the few graphic novels I've ever seen you complete and be disappointed that there was not more.
Yeah.
Or that I did not have the next one available.
That's the only one that you know of.
Right. Well, you've been finishing it next to me and you looked at me and said, oh, is that it? Are we getting the next?
Also, there was a villain character in there that I was like, that is not that's totally different than my experience with that villain in other media.
Yes. Specifically, Black Mass shows up. She had to ask who that was, and I said, "Oh, it's Ewan McGregor from Birds of Prey." She said, "No, it's not."
And I'm like,
no, it is not.
No, it is not.
This character is competent,
and probably psychotic, but not neurotically psychotic.
Right. Fair.
Long Shadows took me a while to get into. I was flipping through it, and I didn't know what to expect with it.
I also didn't warn you that it was not Bruce Wayne Batman.
I was trying to figure out what was going on. It took, it didn't take long for me to realize that this was a post-Death of Death of Batman comic, but it was a little chunky in the beginning. It kind of took me a while to really figure out, what kind of path it was taken. It all did come tie together at the end, and then I kind of wanted to, go a little bit further with it, but, again, that was all I had. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't terrible. Like I said, it had redeemed itself by the time I got to the end, and I wanted to read more. But I just, when I started off, it seemed hard to get into.
So you also suggested, Bear, you brought a third book.
Yes, with some help from Kat. We were sitting at brunch 2 weeks ago, something like that. And we were talking about the episode and how, we needed reading material and stuff for it. And I was just sitting there musing out loud. And I was just like, didn't Kevin Smith, doesn't he have a podcast and
Fat Man on Batman,
a talk show that all he does is talk? I should go to his website, find his stuff and figure out which ones he likes. And Kat was like, he wrote some, right? And I'm like, that sounds perfect. And after a couple of minutes of her Googling, she's like, these are the ones he wrote. I was like, well, let's do Cacophony.
Well, I'd actually read Cacophony when it came out. I think I own the original releases. I got them from Rob, so.
Yeah, I've got those too.
Yeah, I think I did at one point, and they're probably up in my boxes because once I started reading it, I was like, oh yeah, I have read this before because I remember the first part of this. I have talked to people about it.
It's one of my husband's favorite parts in a Batman comic.
It is.
That first.
I was thoroughly entertained and thought that it was a pretty good choice that I made to pull that one out. Yeah, it's kind of less about Batman than it is about
the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, well, specifically Joker.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked it just because it was a little bloodier, it was a little nastier, it was a little, but still had a very bright and colorful artwork, which made it a little bit just more eerie, I think.
So, Kat, we'll go to you on Cacophony because, like you said, you have it, but did you revisit it?
I did a little bit. I did a quick browse through once. I didn't feel like digging through all my long boxes.
Right.
But I always like it because it is a big rogue gallery thing. And that bit at the very beginning with the Joker, like I said, is Troy's favorite Joker bit in any comics because it really shows his level of Joker is scary. Joker's scarier when you realize he's not just chaos and he actually knows what the fuck he's doing all the time. And that's when you're like, oh no.
So
wait a minute, you know what you're doing. This is terrifying.
To bring people up to speed, because it is the first part of the comic, and maybe it will encourage you if you are a fan of Kevin Smith, this is a lot bloodier and a lot grittier. But basically, Deadshot breaks into Arkham. He has been hired by someone to kill the Joker. And the Joker's like, okay, humor me. Who hired you and why? And he's like, well, it's the father of a kid that you killed. And he's like, I think if you look, you'll notice I kill very few children, which again points out that Joker remembers every person that he's killed. So he knows what he's doing. But what we find out is that this C-level, I only knew him from the Batman 66 show. Villain, Rex.
Who thinks he's Zeus.
Yes, who thinks he's Zeus.
Oh, Maxie Zeus.
Maxie Zeus has gotten a hold of the Joker's Smilex, the Venom, and has turned it into and cut it with ecstasy and is selling it in his clubs as street drug.
The new designer drug.
Right. And then there are people that are ODing on it.
Or just getting stupid high and jumping off buildings or...
Right. And this pisses the Joker off to the point...
He breaks himself out of Arkham.
breaks himself out of Arkham. He is so mad that anyone would dare defy... Not that the drug is killing people and not necessarily that it's been used as a designer drug, but that it's not being used specifically to sow chaos and to kill people.
They're manipulating its purpose to him.
Right.
Well, not to mention sullying his good name all at the same time.
Yes.
Right, because they call the drug giggles. And so that starts chuckles. So that starts the whole rampage.
But there's a bit at the end that's the other reason I love Cacophony. It's going to go into one of my big Batman points, which is that Batman is just as crazy as the rest of his rogue gallery. It's just that he's crazy in a productive way for the most part.
Yes.
And
he is a functional crazy.
Yeah.
He is able to work within society.
Kind of. The problem is that the way his crazy manifests is exactly what Joker says in the end, which is, well, you could just let me die. If you choose not to let me die. And Batman's like, no, I can't let anyone else die. And it's like, you have to be crazy to make that mental math. So to go, I'm going to have to save the Joker, and he's going to kill hundreds of more people. I am going to actively save him, which is going to actively cost hundreds of people's lives. And I know that, but I'm going to do it anyway because I literally can't help myself.
It's a long way to go for the time travel Hitler argument.
Yeah.
It's a really long way to go.
I mean, it's only 3 issues, but yeah.
But I think that Cacophony does a good job of showing that point, of kind of building it to the point where Joker's kind of pointing it out, being like, dude, you are kind of responsible for the shit I do.
Yeah. David?
I will admit I had not gone back to Cacophony at all, and I'm sort of piecing together these little bits of it from you guys talking about it. I do remember it introduces an interesting villain in Onomatopoeia.
Yes.
Who is possibly another good villain to get introduced because he also has the ability to just pass as a normal person. He's not disfigured like Two-Face. He doesn't look like a penguin. He is suburban dad who also happens to have a bunch of heads on his wall of other bad people.
Well, yes, and superheroes specifically.
Yeah. And so that is an interesting wrinkle to add in, and it sort of gets continued in the next story that Smith ended up halfway finishing, which was The Widening Gyre, which you don't realize is a sequel to Cacophony until the cliffhanger at the end of issue 6. It was supposed to be a 12-issue series.
And then it got canceled.
He only got 6 issues out, and it was like, what? That's how you stop this? But Widening Gyre is also... it recontextualizes some things that's a little odd, but I remember thoroughly enjoying Cacophony when I read it. I don't look back on it and go, ugh. And it's only a 3-issue arc, so, kill 20 minutes, read Cacophony. It's a good time.
Well, I do have to say that Onomatopoeia is totally a Kevin Smith villain.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, he was also introduced earlier in his Green Arrow run.
Yeah, but it's totally a Kevin. I mean, it has all of the hallmarks of a Kevin Smith villain.
Just weird enough.
Yep.
Yeah. Which Okay, so let's talk about Kat. When a little bit after you arrived, we were just having a pre-show talk, and you mentioned something very interesting that kind of is throughout my notes, and that is if you look at 66 and you look at Batman v Superman, there's a scale there.
all Batman live action media falls on a spectrum of campy to over the top gritty realism. And they don't go in order, but they all fit on the spectrum.
Right, and there are shades of each as you go through.
Fucked up shades. A lot of the Burton Schumacher stuff is like a fucked up shade of dark and campy that are two flavors that should not be good together.
But they are. Oh, so good.
David, you rewatched everything.
Yes. Yes, I did.
I did not quite make it, but I got caught up on what I didn't. I don't know.
I will qualify that I rewatched all of the movies. I did not have a chance to revisit any of the episodes of the 66 series. I was, however, watching a few episodes of the animated series before we started recording today, which was absolutely lovely. So.
Oh, it's delightful.
But yes, I did. I started at 66 and went all the way through to BVS the other 2 days ago.
So I'm going to start with the 66 show and movie, since they're both. The movie was pretty much just a really long episode of the show.
Yeah.
And I was not able to revisit anything but one episode, but I know David, you and Bear jumped into it, because Bear, you watched a whole.
I got about 18 to 20 episodes in, and then just kind of started cherry picking after that.
Right. And David, you watched the movie.
I rewatched the movie for what I think had to be the first time in about 20 years. Like, if I really sat down and thought about it, it had been a long, long time since I saw the movie.
So what are the positives and negatives of the 66 Batman?
Oh, I mean, camp is just everything. Camp is life. One of the positives that I discovered, though, is that there was a trend for a lot of the movies to take Easter eggs. For example, if you remember the second Nolan Dark Knight movie, where they're all wearing clown masks. Season 1, episode 6 of the 66 series is the first episode where you get introduced to Joker. And the mask that he's wearing when he's performing on stage is the same mask that Joker is wearing at the beginning of the movie at the bank scene.
Awesome. That's cool.
I saw that mask and I snapped that picture of my TV screen, and I immediately flipped over to Dark Knight, and I was just like, holy cow, that's awesome.
Holy rusted metal Batman.
Right.
Well, and honestly, if there is one thing from the 66 series that is the lasting thing that has never gone away, it's the jet out of the back of the Batmobile.
Yeah,
Every single Batmobile since 1966 has that jet engine coming out of the back of it. Even with Matt Reeves' movie coming out next year, all of them have that jet. Like, that is, if the character has changed, but that one thing about the Batmobile has always stuck around. And the other thing about the 66 series too, and they talk about this a bit in Wasta, the video that I sent to you and Kat last night, where the 66 series was largely responsible for a comics boom. I mean, the 66 series meant that people saw Batman on the cover of a comic book and went, oh, Batman, I like Batman, yoink. But then there's the backlash to that, which led to sort of not a reinvention, but sort of a return to the roots of the character. Because Batman, initially, it's not sort of a bright, colorful world. I mean, it's a dark book starting out, and he's dealing with mobsters and definitely kills a few people. And then they sort of shy away from that part of it. But it was not, the campy thing that it became in the 60s. And so then it led to, like, in the 70s, we're going to veer back towards, grounding this character a little bit more and making him a bit more mature. But, I mean, the 66 series, I have friends to this day, and again, this goes back to the Sherlock Holmes thing that we were talking about earlier. There are people where, like, Adam West is Batman to them. Like, that is what the character is. I mean, in the Sherlock Holmes world, you get, like, I suppose the two biggest people you would debate between would be Basil Rathbone and Jeremy Brett.
Basil Rathbone for life.
And I have many friends who share that opinion. Yeah. I'm a Jeremy Brett man myself.
Yep, same.
But
not a man, though.
Touche. But, I mean, the 66 series, yeah, I mean, even to this day, the ripples of that are still felt. I mean, you look at some of the stuff they pulled in the Lego Batman movie, you know, having Egghead show up. Like, I was cackling in the theater at some of the stuff they were throwing into that movie, because I was one of the only people, because the kids weren't knowing who the hell Egghead was.
Right.
But it's like, oh shit, he showed up, and it's like, oh, thank you for, you know, it's just and especially for what that movie was like, you can throw in all that the campy, you know, fun stuff, and you see that sort of return to camp with Uma Thurman, especially as Poison Ivy. But I mean, the 66 series, you know, did a lot of good as far as sort of helping repopularize the character, and was sort of a nice boon for the comic end of things while it was on. I will also I will say this about Adam West's Bruce Wayne. He might be the horniest Batman.
I was gonna say I didn't read a lot of the comics before the 60s, but did the Batman 66 kind of introduce the like sexual tension between Batman and Catwoman, or was that just Eartha Kitt and Adam West just having like chemistry?
Well,
also Julie Newmar.
Julie
and
Newmar.
oh, who the hell was the other one? Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt.
But it might just be that Eartha Kitt is just Eartha Kitt.
Yeah.
She brings that kind of energy.
Right. Yes.
Well, go ahead.
I think the Batman Catwoman thing, because Catwoman is a very old member of the Rogues Gallery, and I think if I'm remembering correctly from the bits and pieces I've seen of the old stuff, that relationship is a little more black and white and not so gray. Because I mean, she's a thief, so she's, you know, a criminal. And I think it's later on where they get to really explore that. But I mean, I have no doubt in my mind the 66 series certainly up to that ante for the chemistry between Batman and Catwoman especially. But I mean, God, and Bear, you can back me up on this. Like the date that Bruce goes on with Selina, and he is thirsty as hell. Like he just that whole date, you're like, Bruce, calm down. It's okay. Just calm down.
Dude, just chill. You've got money.
Oh.
You don't need to worry about it.
Should I order us some oysters, some horny goat weed, some
Spanish
Spanish fly?
Well,
Was he
and
Batman or was he Captain Kirk?
Right?
young Adam West is much more handsome than young Kirk. I would. Yeah. I think one of the things that you see here too, as one of the things I want to make sure that I brought up at some point, and I think this is a good time to do it, is when you're playing Batman, there are three people you need to be. You need to be Bruce Wayne when he's around other people. You need to be Bruce Wayne when he's around people who know he's Batman, and you need to be Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam West I think he does a really good job of being those people. Because, I mean, you get him out on the date with Selina, but, I mean, you get, you know, the people talking to Bruce Wayne, the socialite, and he's smiling, and he's handsome, and he's affable. But then, you know, the facade drops when it's like, oh, we got to go to the Batcave. And then there's not a whole lot of difference between we got to go to the Batcave and I'm in the Batsuit, except for him being in the Batsuit.
Well, I mean,
except when he's like, I gotta get into your Batcave.
when you literally just, you know, open up a door and behind, you know, or open up your bookcase, and behind the bookcase it says entrance to Batcave via bat poles, and in the process of sliding down the pole, poof, you are instantly in your outfit, you know, just from top to bottom.
Right.
To be fair, it does show in the movie that he hits the lever that is the instant change thing. So they do.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
But I think the whole series was really a product of its time, right? So the color, how colorful it was because of, you know, the technology that was available at that time and the fashion at that time. How smarmy Bruce is. It was free love time. You know, this is when it was a sexual revolution. And so to show a hero that's embracing that culture made it more popular.
You know,
Batman is a thing.
Yeah.
As you mentioned that, I do realize that I watched Batman 66 with my mom at the same time I was watching Laugh-In with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that does make a lot of sense.
Yes, it does.
And now I'm just seeing Adam West doing the Bat dance.
Yes.
The Bat
with all of the other Laugh-In people dancing.
All these squares make a circle.
Yeah,
well,
suck it to me.
I mean, look at any fun, campy series from that time. I mean, The Monkees. It was very similar in the way it was the you know, film, the art direction, everything.
You can stand up now, Robin. I am standing.
But you know, it was something that was based on a comic that was probably not as campy and lighthearted, but it brought it into the modern time.
I think one of the other things that's interesting about the 66 series as well is that it is the chummiest relationship that Bruce has with the police. Because, like, you watch the 66 movie, and he's going down and he's talking to Gordon and O'Hara, and reporters are there, and Batman talks to reporters in the middle of the day. And, there's the scene where the Batcopter is flying over at the beginning, and everybody's like, oh, look, it's Batman. And you see, like, cops take their hat off and hold it over their heart when Batman flies by.
Right.
And it's just like, it is the most rosy relationship he ever has with the cops.
Well, it's also the I guess safest Batman. I mean, all the things he does, even if there's going to be any danger, there's exposition about how this is so dangerous and we shouldn't do this around people and whatever.
The episode where they get into the car and like they're going to take off, but they can't because Robin doesn't have a seatbelt buckled, and they have to stop and have 60-second conversation about
why it's important to wear your seatbelt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, the PSA aspect of it.
Yeah, because you're still in that time of every episode's got to have a lesson, and somebody's got to learn something from it. The people that are watching have to learn something from it.
And unlike G.I. Joe that put it at the end of the episode, we're going to stick it right in the middle. All right. Well, moving on from 66, you had talked, David, about a Bruce Wayne in public, a Bruce Wayne amongst people that know he's Batman and a Batman. And the next up, I think, out of if you leave 66 off, I think encapsulated it, and that would be 89, the Tim Burton Batman
it's the
movie,
Batman the Motion Picture anthology, basically, because they are all Batman the Motion Picture,
right? But if you're talking about Michael Keaton, portraying that role, and you know what, credit due also to Jack Nicholson in that role.
I mean, arguably one of the best Jokers ever.
But one of the other things I wanted to bring up, having watched it through this time, because I did watch all 4 of these, the unsung hero of all of these is Michael Gough as Alfred.
Dude, best Alfred.
In these movies. Alfred. He is so good. So good.
He's the heart when you need the heart. He's like nicely oblivious when you have to have Alfred completely miss a plot point or whatever. He's always so good.
Right. But so Batman 89. How long had it been since you had watched it last? And what was your takeaway this watching? I will start with David to give everyone else, because everyone else is looking at me.
I do one thing that I was keeping track of, and I didn't mention it for 66, but I'm going to say it now. I was keeping a body count while I was going through these.
Oh, right. Yes. Was there a body count in 66?
Batman gets 1. It's the goon he kicks in the cave and he deatomizes. I gave him 1.
Yes.
The only person without 1 is George Clooney. He's the only one who doesn't kill anybody. Batman 89, I have it as 10.5. There was I think it's Mr. Sunday Beast or somebody on YouTube has a couple of supercut videos of the body counts across the movies. And I was a little more lenient on Batman 89 than he was, because he has Batman 89 at like 17. I have it at 10.5.
Well, I mean, there are some very clear-cut cases, because we were talking about this. Like, he drops bombs off of the side of the Batmobile.
Inside Axis Chemicals.
Yes.
Yeah. The count that I have is 6 in Access Chemicals, 3 in the parade on the float when he shoots a rocket at it, and the dude that he grabs by the head and throws down the bell tower. For sure.
Yeah.
I gave half a point to the Joker because Batman does tie the gargoyle to the Joker's legs. Joker just can't hang on. So, make of that what you will. Now, that being said, it had been, I think, 3 or 4 years since I had watched this, because at one point they were on Netflix, and I'm like, oh, I haven't seen these in a long time. I'll go back and rewatch these. And I, bless you, HBO Max, went back and was rewatching these again for this. And as far as a movie goes, I had forgotten how many kind of crap performances are in it. Like, Keaton is good, Nicholson is good, but like Kim Basinger is pretty. I'll give her that.
I'm not sure that I mean, I'm sure there is something, but nothing really comes to mind as far as a good performance from her. I mean, she's okay.
Right. Well, and it's, if you are saying, like, for example, Vicky Vale in this is supposed to be a photographer that goes into horrific zones and shoots war photography. Like, and I've met people, not specifically that do that, but in similar situations, and they either have a very over-the-top dark sense of humor, or they don't talk at all. Like, and I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but Kim Basinger honestly just looks shell-shocked through the entirety of the movie.
She's super flat.
Yeah,
She's
and
not
she just,
interesting.
there's no emotion.
Yeah.
There's no, even when she's talking about going into these places and, or even showing the Joker, like her portfolio and the whole thing, there's no passion to absolutely anything in her performance.
I would go so far as to say that Nicole Kidman did a better job in
Forever.
Oh my God.
than
Yes.
Kim Basinger did in the 89.
But with the 89 movie, I think the thing that I think gets me about Keaton's performance is he is a little more awkward when he's being public Bruce Wayne than you see in some other interpretations. Like, especially compared to, like, even Adam West. Like, Adam West has a very, smooth, cordial kind of thing, and then you see Bruce talking to Vicky in this, and he sort of bumbles over himself a little bit. It's sort of in almost a Hugh Grantish way of being that kind of bumbling, sort of charming.
Like Clark Kent.
Like Clark Kent, yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
sure. That's a fair
Because
comparison.
Clark is putting on that act. Like, he's being, I'm bumbling and awkward and whatever. That's not usually how Bruce is hiding himself.
Right.
He
Yeah.
just hides himself over
Right.
a sheer punch of charisma.
Well, and not just all Clark Kent, specifically Donner Clark Kent.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think what I took away from that was what they were trying to do was to humanize Bruce a lot more.
Sure.
Because, you're looking at 89, you're looking at the end of the Reagan era is coming up, and people aren't as enamored with the rich. And so you have that scene where he and Vicky are having dinner, and she's, at the huge long table, and he says,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually been in this room before. And she laughs. He doesn't. Like, he doesn't even crack a smile. So you're like, is he actually fucking serious? Like, has he never been in this room? And then they go and they have dinner in the kitchen with Alfred. And that that is the Bruce. That is him letting Vicky see who he is.
Right.
Yeah.
I do like that. And I like that they included it. I also think it is very of its time. It is a very late 80s specifically. You will like this Bruce Wayne because, yes, he's at the time they were still calling him a millionaire, and it was cute. But he is a real person.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And he doesn't have a Batman Forever credit card.
That is true.
Well, and it's, again, of its time. I mean, think about movies like Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, you have categorized this person because of what they do or who you think they are, and then you learn that they're actually not that. They're this.
Right. And in Pretty Woman, it specifically goes both ways.
Yeah.
And I think it was supposed to do that with Vicky, but
Yeah.
Did he have to pay extra for her going both ways in Pretty Woman?
that's a deleted scene
It's the director's cut.
in his closet. Yes.
Yeah.
The other interesting
On
thing
HBO
with
Max
89.
next April.
The other interesting thing with 89 is the change it makes to how the Waynes get killed in having Joker do it instead of Joe Chill.
Right.
Which, as a dramatic device, I can certainly understand. But, I mean, I know when Keaton got cast for that role, you hear about it in interviews, there was all sorts of public backlash from people going, oh, God, why him? Because at that point, he'd basically been doing comedies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, even just, having Keaton in there at all. But yeah, like the decision to tweak that a little bit. And, I mean, and it plays out at the end, too, because it's one of the myriad of times that Bruce ends up revealing his identity throughout these movies. And it wasn't even somebody he was trying to sleep with.
Right? I actually have a specific note on that for Batman and Robin, but we will get there.
Yeah.
I think that this is a good time to insert. You had talked about casting for the role. And I am a firm believer in that the men who are cast as Batman must have good lips.
And a chin.
Yeah.
That
They
didn't save George Clooney.
George
Well,
Clooney at that time, though, was at the height of his Dr. Sexy ER
Oh, I
phase.
know. My point is that, like, he has good lips and a good chin and did not save his...
Oh, I didn't say that it made him a good Batman.
Okay.
I
Well,
said that's how they got cast.
They also called final shutdown, the last the last scene, and Clooney, this is documented, and he has said it, turned to, I think, Chris O'Donnell and said, I think we just killed this franchise.
Clooney has
Used
also
to.
been known to give people money back who admit they
Yes.
went and saw the movie in theaters.
If you meet
Yeah.
George Clooney and you say, I saw Batman and Robin in the theater, he used to just hand you $10.
Yeah. he's a funny guy. I like him. I was not a fan until I saw From Dusk Till Dawn.
Right.
Oh, he's good in that one.
Oh, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
I grew up watching ER, which was absolutely inappropriate when you think about how old I was, but still.
I watched ER as well and was not impressed. Like, everyone was like, oh my God. And I was like, no, he doesn't do anything for me. And then I saw him as his character. I guess I just like assholes.
Dusk Till Dawn did it for me for a little while, and then he kind of fell off. Like, it was Hail Caesar.
Oh, God.
Him and Hail Caesar
so
was so good as a Hollywood actor that gets basically whisked away by the socialists and doesn't realize he's in a socialist meeting or that he's been kidnapped.
I hadn't even seen, I don't think I had seen anything. Like, I had watched ER when I was a kid, but like I was A, dude, and B, too young to really care about his performance, and didn't really see anything again until Ocean's 11. And then I was just like, yeah, where the hell have you been?
Yeah.
I was like 7 when I watched ER, so it was nothing to do with like, oh, he's hot. I didn't care. It was more like, oh, I like Nurse Hathaway, and he was the one who was with Nurse Hathaway because I was 7.
There you go. Okay, so any other thoughts on 89, having watched it? How long had it been?
It's a real, like, I get why people were mad when Keaton was cast, because you think about the fact that literally a year before he was in Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And with Tim Burton. And so you're like, this is the duo that's doing Batman? This is going to be fucked up.
Right. Well, and speaking of Kevin Smith, Tim Burton famously, when he did his Planet of the Apes, and Kevin Smith was like, that looked a lot like I had in Chasing Dogma. He had this whole thing that shot for shot looks very, very similar. Tim Burton's response to that was
Chasing Dogma?
Yes, it's the comic book series that goes between Chasing Amy and Dogma. And there is a Planet of the Apes-ish, like the apes chasing down Dante and Randall and all this stuff. But in Jay and Silent Bob. And Tim Burton's response was, anybody that knows me knows I have never read a comic book.
Gee.
We can tell.
Listen, anybody that knows you, or anybody that has seen your work knows
right?
facts.
Well, because it's obvious that his less best, like, there can't be, and you feel like these are kind of comic booky, but really they're Batman 60-60.
Right.
Like, he's taking total influence from the show.
Yes.
Batman never cracked the spine on a comic book.
Right. So to go from that, let's talk about Returns, 92.
I swear Batman Returns was just Tim Burton, like, doing a dry run for Nightmare Before Christmas.
In what way?
Well, everything's Christmas. There's a lot of weird clowns and odd monsters dancing around town, literally dancing around town.
Elfman went to 11 on that whole soundtrack, too.
Also very true.
And I also would like to point out that both of the Burton movies they're the most quotable ones. Like, there are so many lines in both of those movies that I still say.
It depends on how much you like ice puns.
This town needs an enema.
Well, yes. But yeah, it's so the second one.
Don't forget, you are my number one.
Okay, it's oh my god. Nicholson doing
Jack Palance.
Yes. Nicholson doing Palance is a highlight. But yeah, Returns, I will say, is and I thought it going into this. I thought, and we'll get to it in a second, I thought maybe Forever. I remembered liking that a lot, so maybe Forever was my favorite. Returns is my favorite Batman movie. I love the Danny DeVito Penguin. I love the Michelle
Pfeiffer Catwoman is
Michelle
amazing.
Pfeiffer Catwoman. Yeah.
Throwing a baby in a river to get rid of it. It's got everything.
Okay, well, maybe that's just me then.
Danny DeVito Penguin, it's like it was mostly really good, and then Tim Burton there are Penguin when he's like being a sexist pig, being like, I'd like to fill her hole, like
right.
Oh, he's real horny.
I'm like, that's great, Penguin, because
talking about thirsty,
Penguin's a lecherous little fuck.
Yes.
But then you have him like eat a raw fish on screen, and his teeth are black and like oozing, and I'm like, you already made him a disgusting villain we hated. You didn't have to make him physically disgusting. You didn't have to make him eat a fish for us to hate him more.
No.
We're gonna hate him already.
Because the sexist dudes need to hate him too.
Right.
Like they can't like him too much.
It was the 80s.
Yes, it was
the 90s.
It was the 90s. Well, it was barely the 90s. But I mean, both of these movies have so many quotes.
First of all,
so many.
92 is more than like just the tip of the knife.
Sure.
Don't even what?
I mean, it is just the tip. It's just a game you play between friends. What? Stop it.
Fine.
Just to see
You
how it
poor
feels?
guys, always confusing your pistols with your privates.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Dude,
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman was just
Yes.
quotable the whole time.
Yes.
Also,
Ingrid the Catwoman, just the pussy I've been looking for.
yeah. Speaking of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, because the clip was making the rounds again on Twitter, that
I
scene
saw
where she
that.
whips the head off the mannequins, one take.
She actually
In the
did
department
that
store.
in one take.
Nice.
Because there's like
Yeah.
a far shot that went viral that showed her like doing like a little happy dance as soon as they called cut, and people coming up and congratulating her because she nailed them all.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, or even the first. Yeah, the backflips and stuff out of the department store. She stops in front of Batman and Penguin, just stops, looks at them and goes, "Meow," and the store explodes like
Penguin
such a
calls dibs.
yeah.
I saw her
Yeah.
I saw her first. But we talked specifically Doom Patrol. We talked about how the difference in wacky or mind altering or weird that I go to is fantastical, and this was just fantastical enough. I mean, like no umbrella is going to work where you could just attach it to somebody's ankle. It turns into a helicopter, takes them up.
Right.
That's not how science works, But it's wacky
Physics.
enough. Yeah, physics. Yes.
Especially not someone as big as Penguin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, because he did it to Catwoman.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry. You're watching Batman and talking about how things don't conform to physics?
I'm
we haven't
saying-
gotten to Nolan
Josh.
We haven't
I'm
got
saying-
Stop
yet.
it.
We
I'm
haven't
saying
gotten to
got a
Nolan
point.
yet.
We haven't gotten to Nolan yet.
Right. And I'm saying it hasn't gone. It goes into the fantastical at that point. There's enough fantastical in this movie that I'm like, okay, I'm having a good time. And it's that is what the 66 part of it is. That's the camp.
It's got
is-
the right blend of camp and dark. It
Right.
doesn't go too far onto either side.
Right.
Well, and I think that's where Burton was a good choice because he was able to blend those two, and I'm not sure if another director would have been able to
Clearly not.
take people who were children during the 66, well, not during, but when that was popular on TV as a franchise, and then were adults when these movies were made. For me, it was great. Like, I absolutely picked up on a lot of things that were congruent to the 66 series.
Right.
And obviously, other directors couldn't do a good job because Schumacher did not do a good job.
Yes.
I can use an euphemism here, but they weren't good.
But you're also looking at this and you see Walken's performance.
I
And
forgot he was in it.
I-
until I
I
opened. I was
totally
like, oh,
did
fuck
too.
yeah.
I mean, it's
We were sitting here watching it, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" I just completely fucking forgot Walken was in this movie.
she tries to blackmail me. I'll toss her out a taller window.
Oh, I know. I loved it. Selena Kyle, you're fired. And Bruce Wayne, what are you doing here dressed like Batman? Because
He is
he is Batman, you moron.
Well, and speaking of Christopher Walken, that's 2 movies in a row with a charred corpse in them.
Also true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And David knows the answer to this because I sent it to him. In both this movie, Jen knows it too because I had to tell her. But in both this movie and in Batman Begins, bad guys also become Marvel villains. And do you know which one?
That begins.
Scarecrow and Max Schreck both become Taserface.
Oh, God.
Because it came because I had forgotten that Rachel, when she shoots a taser at Scarecrow in Batman Begins, hits him in the face.
Right in the face.
Because as soon as it said Scarecrow, I'm like, he's not in Marvel. What are you talking about? I like that actor. He wasn't in Marvel.
Yes, they were both Taserface.
Okay, yeah.
My
Stupid
body count
Guardians
for
of the
this one
Galaxy. Oh yes,
is 2.5 because there's the goon who gets set on fire, the one goon who gets blown up, and then I gave half a point to the penguin.
What about Max Schreck?
Max Schreck is killed by Catwoman.
Oh,
Yes.
true.
Yeah.
He just doesn't.
Yeah,
say
she gives him a taser kiss to the face.
As she
Yeah.
grabs the
Live wire.
Yeah.
live wire in the power
Yeah.
plant.
Yeah,
In
I mean, we get a
case-
severed hand too. There's all sorts of fun stuff in this one.
In case you were wondering, by the way, if the 9 Lives thing was just coincidences or actually a thing, she puts it all to rest at the end.
it. You mean she might not have just been saved by Kitty Litter?
Right.
I do. Have
Well,
to
and that
say,
final
though, go ahead.
that final shot of Catwoman was like a last minute thing they added in. It ended up costing some ludicrous amount of money because they had to bring in a body double to put it into the suit for that shot where Catwoman looks at the bat signal. They added it in like weeks before the movie ended up coming out. I don't remember why, but it was some stupid expensive shot just for that, 10 seconds right at the end of the movie.
So the one note that I have here that we haven't covered on Batman Returns is, I would say, even if you don't agree that this is the best Batman movie, I will say that this is the gold standard Batman movie for having two villains, because the way that the villains interact and the way that things happen, I guess the only other argument I can think of that has only two villains would be Dark Knight.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah, because you have Ra's al Ghul's daughter, and you have Bane.
And Catwoman.
And you have Catwoman, but she's
barely a villain.
She's barely
I
a
don't
villain
know.
in that.
She's not really a villain in this one either.
Okay.
She's sort of, because she's killing people.
She is, in fact, killing people.
But she also is, I mean...
She's killing bad people.
Yeah.
One other thing I do want to say about Returns, only because this moment stands out to me in that movie, is the moment at the masquerade ball, which is, I think, probably...
We discussed
I was
that.
about to bring that up myself, yeah.
As we were watching it, we were talking about that.
Yeah, because
yes,
that moment when Bruce and Selina realize who each other are is a wonderful bit of acting from the both of them. And especially just like the look of almost, I don't know if it's terror necessarily, but sort of just shock on Michelle Pfeiffer's face is just brilliant. And also, obviously, the commentary that they're the only two people in the room not wearing masks, which ends up getting revisited in Dark Knight Rises, where they're wearing their masks at the masquerade ball because there's, Bruce and Selina are their masks. But, for the sort of occasionally hammy nature of what can be going on around them, that is a genuinely good moment of acting.
I still hold it up as the moment in everything video Batman of like best reveal of Batman's identity.
Yes.
Anywhere.
Sure.
I will, to do our due diligence for this show, I will say, if you really dig the whole Bruce Wayne, Selina Kyle, Batman, Catwoman romance, Hush. Pick up and read Hush, because it is when they finally stop playing games and it becomes a thing. I mean, there have been more recent things that I have not read.
Yeah.
I have not read the... Okay.
I mean, Harnois might have know better than I do, but I've heard what happens at the end of that last, like, Batman and Selina Kyle are going to get married story arc, and no, I'm good.
Okay.
I mean, it's not good for one person in particular.
Okay.
I'm not going to say who, but it's very not good for one person in particular. But now the Phantasm is showing up in the comics, so, that's fun. But that's a whole other discussion.
But yeah, Hush,
so good.
Hush does that romance while pulling it into a larger rogues gallery detective story.
Yeah,
all the characters, like,
it's got everything.
It's so
it's got
good. Yeah,
sword fighting. It's got monsters. It's got romance.
I'll try to stay awake.
Yeah, right.
The other thing about the two Tim Burton movies in particular is the sort of lasting influence of them too is the tone to a large degree of the animated series.
Right.
Because you get those gothic elements, but I mean, with the animated series, you get a lot more of the Art Deco and sort of noir kind of look to it as well. But I mean, the tone of that show, I don't think would have worked as well if the two Burton movies hadn't happened.
Yeah, I would agree completely.
Yeah.
No, and it definitely colored Selina Kyle. I don't know if it colored the Penguin as much, but I can definitely see the animated series Selina Kyle and Catwoman being very close to the Michelle Pfeiffer.
Especially since she was blonde.
Yeah. I think Bruce Timm, I think that he went and like cherry picked. He was like, I like this little bit of this and I like this. Because they talked about how they might have put Max Schreck into Batman the Animated Series. And he was like, no, I want us to be our own thing. We don't need that. We can create our own version of a rich shop owner.
Right. We can't have Constantine. We'll just make some other guy, which we have run into in the show 3 times now, I think. And only once because it was Marvel. So to go from Batman Returns, we go to Batman Forever. That I remembered.
Honestly, we can probably even just lump both of the Schumacher movies together.
No, we can't.
I think we can.
Forever is still better.
Yes.
Infinitely. And I think it's the tone that the actors...
No, I gotta say infinitely. I'm with him on that.
I don't know. I think they're both equally
really hate
bad.
George Clooney. And I really
I hate Val Kilmer. So, you know,
I think they had their moments. I think Val Kilmer was a good Batman, and I think Clooney was a good Bruce Wayne. And I don't think either one of them did the other one any justice.
At all.
I agree. I totally agree with that. So Batman Forever I remembered as really enjoying, and then I watched this watch, and I don't have that opinion
You can't
anymore.
go back, kids.
You can never go home.
Well,
Adulthood is hard.
there are some things to remember. Like, okay, to break it down between this and Batman and Robin, you got Jim Carrey at the height of Ace Ventura. The height of Ace Ventura. Yeah. This is just after Ace Ventura.
Yeah,
this
I was
is
gonna
right
say.
before he does Cable Guy. This is The Mask.
That
was
was
just after this.
That was my issue, was that like I saw Jim Carrey and I didn't see the Riddler.
Oh, because he wasn't being the Riddler.
I
He was
just
just
saw
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
Right.
and I hated that.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
Which I was at a point in my life where I loved all of that, and I loved Jim Carrey.
You mean you were in the target audience?
Right. I was a teenager in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Yes. Tommy Lee Jones is having
He's having the time of his
He
life
is. He's
playing
having
Two-Face.
fun with
He
it.
really is.
And now that I have seen other movies where he does that, there is a goddamn horrible movie called Man of the House.
Oh my god, but he's so good in it.
Right. But it's not a good movie. He's a
terrible.
cop watching a sorority house. Like, it's not a
The
good
sorority house
movie.
full of
I'm
cheerleaders.
suddenly
It's
curious.
all bad.
Yes, it is all bad. But some of his stuff in Men in Black and, the things that he did after this, I almost feel like this role had other casting directors being like, oh, this is what he'll do if we just tell him, hey, Tom, have some fun. Just take this role, have fun, and
Tommy Lee Jones also has a spectrum of like give a shit to not give a shit.
yes.
And I think he is at his best in the center. When he has to like care too much, I feel like it's not as good. And if he genuinely is checked out like some of the later Men in Black movies, those
Yes.
are not fun. But this is like that perfect middle ground
Oh,
of
yeah.
like
He's not,
I
I'm
kind
not
of care, but also it doesn't matter.
I'm not winning a single award for anything in this. Oh, wait. Am I going to win a golden raspberry? No, Jim Carrey's right there. No, I'm
Well, and Tommy Lee Jones did not like Jim Carrey. Like, they were not cordial on the shoot for this movie because
He
Jones
was
just,
obnoxious.
yeah, he did not like him.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I can see it. Jim Carrey looked obnoxious.
Right?
I can totally see it, and I'm with Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah. As an adult, you watch it and go, "Oh my god! Imagine having to work with that dude. Does he ever turn off? How awful must that have been?"
Also, my personal story for this is I worked for Bandai Entertainment in the early 2000s, and I worked in collectible card games. But I went to all these conventions, and one of them that I went to was the second Gen Con Southern California. And while I was working the booth, I took my lunch break, which was 1 hour, to stand in line to pay the $20 to get an autographed picture of Val Kilmer because I wanted him to sign it as my batsuit did not have nipples, Val Kilmer. And I did all of that. And when I asked him for it, he motioned and I got pulled out of line. And less than an hour later, he left the convention, like completely ignored like whatever deal he had with them because he was supposed to be like 2 panels and another signing thing.
Wow.
And he just left. Yeah. So,
But
like,
his batsuit did have nipples.
it did not. Clooney's had
Clooney's
nipples.
had nipples.
I was watching.
You
No,
were watching for
I
nipples?
made a note of it when I was
Nipples?
rewatching it. There's some nips on that batsuit.
Maybe it's just in passing then, because like Clooney's, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
I have
ah.
nipples.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang
Clooney's
on. I
was-
have
it
an
was
image
cold
right
outside.
here.
Yes, it's
There
true.
was ice.
It was.
oh, oh.
Ah, turkey's done.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, 'cause when-
Older story arc.
At the beginning of the movie, when Kilmer is wearing basically the 89 suit, there's nips on that bat suit. Now, the suit he ends up in does not have them, but there are bat nips at the start of that movie.
Okay.
No,
All
it's
right.
the bat symbol over his pecs.
Right. Yeah.
No
But
nipples.
but the suit at the very beginning is the Keaton suit, and that one gets him. Also, this movie is one of 2 movies in a row that has gratuitous butt and crotch shots
Oh,
for
yeah,
Batman.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh well.
Batman,
God.
Robin, Batgirl.
Batgirl eventually.
Gratuitous.
Yeah.
I think there is a difference between a butt shot and a shot that happens to have a butt in it. And this movie had butt shots.
the bonus of it being a gay director, though, is that there were equal opportunity butt shots. It
That's
wasn't
true.
just women.
It's true.
Sure.
And
We
as a
gotta
matter of
take our
fact,
wins where we can
most
get
of
'em.
them were men.
Yeah, honestly, it felt kind of like the Batgirl one was just like, oh, I guess I have to.
I did this viewing have to pause it once to do research because I wondered who the fuck the fourth Flying Grayson was. There are 4 in this one.
Who the fuck's the fourth Flying Grayson?
His older brother Mitch.
Wow, they couldn't even think of a good name. That sounds like a fake name.
I'm sorry,
So
Mitch
you had-
Beam, if you're listening to this.
You had
Your
Rich
name is
and Mitch.
What? You have Dick and Mitch.
Children were but it's Richard.
Well, that's
So
true.
you had
That's why
Rich
he's called
and
Mitchell.
Mitch.
Yeah, so
Richard and Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Yeah, so I had to look that up because I was like, because there's
Also-
3 bodies. And I'm like, and I saw 4 people. I'm like, no. And then I looked it up and and it was like a whole thing that they added because Dick talks later about how his older brother, like his rope broke and he went out there and that's why they called him Robin. And I'm like, okay, I don't care how good of an acrobat you are. A rope breaks and the dude is falling. That physics says the realization for you to jump on a trapeze and get there before he has hit the floor is that's not
That is not happening. But we're going to go back to you thinking about physics while
right.
watching a Batman movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. But if Jen can do it with the Fast and the Furious movies, I feel I should be able to do it with the Batman movies.
no, because we haven't gotten to Nolan yet.
That's
Then-
true.
Then
And that's
we come back to reality a little bit.
right. And So any more on Forever? Anyone?
I was actually. Go ahead.
Oh, my body count is 2-ish. 'Cause the note I have is he's kind of responsible for the goons in the truck that get blown up, like when the Batmobile sidesteps and that rocket just goes right into the truck.
Yeah.
He's kind of responsible for Two-Face throwing all the coins at him, but
Yeah.
at that point, Two-Face can't keep his own balance, so and then when the Batmobile drives up the alley and there's that pile of cars that chase him.
The pile of cars that as it was happening, I started going da 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 da.
I think the thing about this one, and I remember commenting to you because I was sort of live commenting some of this to you when I was going through them. Kilmer's vocal performance never gets above a normal room speaking voice the entire movie. It's a very sort of one note read of everything.
This was the only of the original 4 that I had to turn up the volume on. All of the Nolan movies, I had to have my sound bar like almost maxed and then like turn it down like for explosion pieces.
As soon as the explosion happens.
Yes, but the mixing in this was weird because like you could make Kilmer sound louder. Like that's not just an acting thing. That's also a sound mixing thing.
But that's basically him just talking like this throughout the entire movie. Like that's all he's doing.
You could be my wingman.
Which-
Right, but you've got to think that was direction. That wasn't the actor saying this is my.
Well, and Val
interpretation of
Kilmer is apparently also not easy to work with either. So I could see some of that him just being a dick.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing with this one as well that I sort of noticed to a greater extent in Batman and Robin, which maybe this is a good way to bridge between the two of them, is from an aesthetic standpoint, this movie and to a greater extent Batman and Robin are sort of aesthetically at odds with each other. Because the architecture of the Gotham City that they are in, and I'm talking purely about the architecture, still jives with the stuff that Burton was doing. The color palette they put on top of it is where things start getting weird.
That was about what I was about to bring up was the color palette.
You don't know of any gangs that have blacklight battles?
Yeah, that's
because I'm just saying, if I ever have a gang, if I'm ever a first lieutenant in Jen's henchman gang,
okay,
we're gonna have black lights. We're
Sure,
gonna have
that's
black
fair.
light paint and black lights.
But I think
It's not
Forever
the 90s
is
anymore. You can't get away with this shit.
I think Forever is better about sort of still trying to preserve a lot of the tone that Burton had established. But then by the time they get to Batman and Robin, and Schumacher himself has apologized for the movie on several occasions because he was basically making a toy commercial.
Yes.
It was basically in line with like what He-Man and Transformers were doing, where it is a thing that exists to sell toys. And Batman and Robin is a weird one because it's the most diametrically opposed aesthetically, because you really get some nice looking architecture that they throw a lot of really heavy color on. But then there are moments, and the one in particular that I made note of in that movie is it's a daytime shot, and it's when Poison Ivy's red car is driving down a street in Gotham, and it's this Dutch angle shot, and the street's driving down with Bane at the wheel, but like just looking at that shot, I'm like, that would look at home in a Burton movie. Like, just that moment is like, oh, that looks like something that I recognize, but then the minute it becomes nighttime again, it's neon colors for everybody.
Well, going back and talking about Forever and Burton, I feel like the other part of that is that at some point in Returns, when the Batmobile like becomes just like a thin tube that goes through the alleyway, I feel like Schumacher looked at them and said, "Yes, penis Batmobile," because the Batmobile never looks more like the incredibly gay duo's car than it does in Batman Forever.
The ambiguously gay duo?
The ambiguously gay duo, thank you. It was the most penis Batmobile I have ever seen.
To the point where they hard corrected with Nolan. They're like, we're going to make this the least penis-looking thing we can make.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They're like, this looks more like a vagina than it does a penis. Not that it looks a lot like either, but if you had to choose one.
Well, and the interesting thing with the Batman and Robin Batmobile is it's the first one since the 66 series that has an open top. Because you get him to hop in, and he's basically driving a Formula One racer at that point. But all the other ones get some hood of some sort.
So Batman and Robin.
Okay, is it just me, or was like every prop and every person wired hard for wire fu?
Oh my God, and it all looked cheap.
Yeah, it did not look good.
Right. Like, those were Michael's vines. Like, those were vines that you find at the Michael's craft store for almost everything Poison Ivy had, period.
I will pay this movie the compliment that they at least made Bane Hispanic.
Yes.
This is true.
Yes.
Kind of.
Stupid, but Hispanic.
Close enough.
Yeah, they did Bane dirty. God, it's hard to argue which villain, it's not hard to argue which villain got the worst treatment in all of these movies. And then if you take Bane out of the equation, it's kind of hard. Because Bane honestly got the worst interpretation. Like Deadpool in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like, it was bad.
Well, and I think if you could have the physical presence of this Bane mixed with how smart Tom Hardy's Bane was, that would have been really good.
Yeah, because I didn't love Tom Hardy's Bane because I feel like it was missing a lot of the elements to me that's like very Bane. And I think, if you took these two and smushed them into one Bane, that would be a good Bane.
If you took the ability for this Bane to speak, because he grunts, but at least he's not distorted.
Yeah.
Like, at least I don't have to turn on subtitles to understand what's going on.
And also his size, like he said, Bane should be this giant, especially when he's venomed up.
He should be like the Batman, the animated Batman.
Yeah, he should be this huge, intimidating figure with this great accent.
Right.
He's still very smart. Yeah. And no one ever gets it right. Bane, people have always failed to get Bane right. It's always a shit show.
They did, I think they did a really good job with him in the Telltale game. Because I thought that was a really, really good version of him. Because he's
Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that goes without saying.
But do you think that it was necessary to include Bane?
Oh God, no.
No.
I really felt like it was a disservice to that character, but it was also a disservice to Poison Ivy.
Yeah. Right. Why even
Poison Ivy was like
no.
I can't do it. I'm a woman, but I have this thing that does these things. He drives me around.
It feels like
I have a lurch. Is what I have.
Right.
Purposefully they went backwards because you have the Batman Returns where Catwoman's like, "How could you? I'm a woman," and he goes to Batman goes to apologize. She kicks him,
right?
And it's like I was saying, I'm a woman and should not be underestimated.
Right.
And then you have like Poison Ivy that's like, "Oh no, my pheromones don't work. Bane, save me!"
Right.
Well, it fell for the classic blunder that kills how many pre-Marvel, pre-MCU superhero series, which is too many villains.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as they do too many villains, it kills the series.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I don't necessarily think that if this was just Poison Ivy
they were clearly
and
running
Mr.
out
Freeze,
of money by this point.
Yeah.
Yes. But the other thing, when we were talking about Bruce and his reveal, the note that I had, and Kat, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring this up, is the first scene where Batgirl shows up.
Oh,
and And she shows up, and Robin is like, "Oh, somebody else joined the team." And Batman is like, "So, Batwoman, Batgirl," and she goes, "It's me, guys, Barbara." Like, that's the first thing she says, and I'm like, "You couldn't go 2 fucking seconds, Barbara." You're the worst.
It's not her worst line.
It was suit me, Uncle Alfred being the worst.
Alfie, Uncle Alfie.
That's
Well,
right.
my comment was hate, but couldn't they get, I mean, I get it. Alicia Silverstone was hot at the time, but obviously couldn't even fake a British accent. You couldn't get someone who could.
Or at least a red wig.
Yeah, something.
You have to be blonde.
Because she was like, why did you make her British? And doesn't have a British accent.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's an alternate reality, England, because did you catch what school she was going to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oxbridge.
Oxbridge, yeah.
God.
I will also say one really lovely moment in this movie, despite all of it, is when Mr. Freeze is sitting there watching his wedding video. And he's just sitting there, and he's like... That is a genuinely good moment of acting in this movie. And then he gets interrupted and makes a nice pun. And it's like, oh, you were so close. You were so close.
But
take place before or after Batman the Animated Series?
After.
Okay.
This was 97, so.
Because Batman the Animated Series is the one that really saved Mr. Freeze.
Yes. Yep. And this was taken directly from that.
I will just say this. Oxbridge is a portmanteau of Oxford and Cambridge, the 2 oldest, wealthiest, and most famous universities in the United Kingdom.
She's right.
Huh, interesting. Well, I stand corrected on that one.
It's still bad.
I thought it was a joke.
It's still bad.
Like everything else was in this movie. Also, Batgirl's a terrorist because while she cannot figure out a 4-letter password earlier, she somehow can hack U.S. Army satellites.
Right.
Yes.
I like the attempt to be like, well, the Oracle exists, but no. You just fucked it up more.
The thing that got me, it's not about like figuring out a password. It's like, if you are like a computer engineer hacker, and I'm using very sarcastic air quotes around hacker, you shouldn't need to try to figure out what the password is.
Right. You should find a backdoor.
You're not using the GUI here.
Right.
So, yeah.
Also, my last note on this is that Coolio couldn't even save this movie.
Yeah, I saw him pop up in there, and I was just like, "Oh, that's
Listen,
that's
Coolio made Daredevil better in the director's cut. I keep telling you, I'm telling you, and I'm
It's your hill, and you'll
Speaking of director's cuts, one thing I did want to mention with Batman Forever is that there is a fan-edited version of it called the Red Book Edition, which puts the deleted scenes back into the movie and cuts out some of the camp and reworks some of the color palette. And Schumacher was at odds a little bit because he did want to make something a little more in line with what Burton had been doing. And the existence of the deleted scenes, like especially the one in the cave where Bruce sort of realizes that he's not the one to blame for, his parents getting killed. Like taking a look at the psychology of Bruce a little more, there is a call amongst some people online for like Joel Schumacher to get a crack to like, oh, maybe since you obviously shot the stuff to do it, maybe you could get a chance to put out the version of the movie you wanted to put out before the studio, had you camp it up a little bit.
Maybe HBO Max will give him $70 million.
Everything's shot, but we're still gonna need $70 million for reshoots. It'll be fine. We need that much just to CGI reduce the age of everyone back to the 90s.
Okay,
that's a discussion for next month.
That's true. Coming up on our Justice League episode. So then we get into Nolan's Batman trilogy. Batman and Robin essentially killed the movie franchise for quite some time.
George Clooney was right.
Yes, he was. And then this, as Bear has been pointing out, much more grounded scientific version of Batman.
There's nothing supernatural. There's nothing crazy off the wall. There's a few things that are, maybe a little over the top, but really, like, there's nothing outside the bounds of our current basic reality.
How long it had been, and what did you guys think?
Except for How You Treat Burns, that next movie.
Yeah, it is.
I watch all three of those on a regular basis. I keep going back to them because that's my favorite trilogy out of all the Batman stuff.
It had been a couple of years because I got the box set of them for Christmas a few years ago, and I rewatched them all then. But it had been, I think, 2 years or so since I had seen all three of them. And it was a delight to go back and revisit them.
Yeah, I mean, they seem the most accessible, I guess. I mean, they are, other than Batman v Superman, they are the closest, like, but they are their own just Batman-specific trilogy. Because I was about to say, Night Rises came out in 2010?
Something real close to that.
2012.
2012. Okay. So 9 years ago. Pretty close, but I don't know. And I think that's it. Like, this is no less real than your typical action movie, at least when you get to Begins, when you're starting from Begins. They may get a little bit more wacky or losing.
I mean, the tech gets a little...
Yeah.
Gets a little over the top as you get into the second, third movie, but still overall, also not outside the bounds of our current reality.
Right. True. Also, out of 140 minutes, Batman is only on screen for 24 minutes and 14 seconds.
You timed that out?
No,
Okay.
I looked it up online. I did not go through all of that. But there are people with way more time on their hands than I have, but they have the same questions I do.
And you're counting once he's got the suit all together. You're not like where he
No,
goes
it's not Bruce Wayne. It's just Batman.
But I'm like the scene. Are they counting like the scene where he goes in to see Jim Gordon and he's got the stapler to the back of his head?
Yes.
And, okay.
Yeah. Anything where
he's
it's
not
like
actually in the suit
Batman yet? Or proto Batman, like
Okay.
your whole like the Batman persona,
Sure.
I guess. Yeah, just 17% of the movie is Batman-less.
Well, and I mean, with Batman Begins, this is really the first time we get, like, this is interesting because Begins, as the title would denote, gives us the longest ever look we've ever really gotten as Bruce leading up to being Batman. Like, even every interpretation before this, we are just dropped into a world where Bruce is already Batman. Like, he might be early in his career, but he is Batman. And Begins is, I mean, obviously about Bruce having to figure out who he is, going over his training that he's been going through before putting on the suit. So, I mean, there is definitely a less is more thing with this particular movie as far as giving you Batman. And also my body count for this one is 14 and a half. Because I had to defer to the supercut video on this one because I tended to agree with them. 10 people in the monastery, 2 people when he drives over that cop car. He mines the road, that's 2 more cops, and I give him half a point for Raish.
Oh yeah,
Which
is a great point because he has the "I don't have to save you" line, which
I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Right, which I was interested in its direct opposition to the end of Cacophony.
Yes.
It's direct opposition to comic Batman.
Right.
Like generally accepted comic Batman. The problem with Batman is that his history is so long. When he started, he killed people. Like you, like Frank Miller Batman in there and shit. But
well, and not to mention leaving KG Beast to die twice.
Right.
And some other times he's done some morally
Batman
grave
ethos
things.
is he won't kill, but he also can't let someone die if he can do anything about it.
Right.
Which is, I think, why I like the Nolan movies the best, is because he didn't necessarily, he threw the hot iron that started the building on fire, but if everybody else didn't stick around to fight him, they wouldn't have died in the fire.
Right.
They could have just ran out of the building. Oh shit, the building's on fire, let's run out of the building. So it's like, I totally, I can accept the body count, totally, but, I appreciate this Batman more, because it's just like, you know what, I'm not going to actively try and save you. He actively tried to save one person who he considered his friend, and everybody else could just fuck off.
Also, this is the first out of all of these movies that we get a Lucius Fox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who, this on, at least, I, not being as familiar, but it seems like this on, Lucius Fox became a much more important character and figure in the Batman mythos.
I think it's a good representation. Like, Batman's kind of white. There's a lot of whiteness.
Right, well, that too.
In the Batman world. But also, it's because we're in the internet age. In the 90s, you didn't necessarily need a guy in a chair.
Right.
Lucius really serves that purpose for especially the Nolan movies, because they aren't going to expand the supporting cast of Batman, which is my favorite part of Batman, is the supporting cast, which is why Nolan movies are always like, they're fun, but
right.
I would like Babs, I would like Dick, I like my supporting cast a lot more. But I think Lucius serves the Oracle role really well. That, like, person that he can go throw ideas at, who can, like, look a thing up for him while he's in the middle of shit.
So, man.
I do also appreciate that we do finally get Joe Chill in a movie.
Yes.
They make the tweak that they're doing Deflator Mouse instead of the Mark of Zorro, but we do get Joe Chill, which is nice.
Right. That's true.
Also, Wasta, I feel like this is a good time to mention what I had said to you when I was rewatching this movie about fear, which they talk about fear in the beginning parts of this movie. They talk about fear like the Fast and the Furious talks about family.
Yeah,
it's just
it's a lot.
It's very true.
Also, the fact that they're watching Deflator Mouse is amusing to me because the mayor played Deflator Mouse in The Tick. Well, he was Batman, but but that was the version of Deflator Mouse.
Forgot about that.
So this may be one of the longest that we've ever recorded, and we're coming up on actually 8 minutes before a hard stop. So we've got 3 movies left. I'm going to roll all of the Nolans because a lot of Dark Knight tends to be focused on Joker. We've done an episode on Joker. Like, we talked a lot about Dark Knight then, but I'll give our 2 guests that were not there for that if they have any notes specifically on Dark Knight.
As a girl who had a massive crush on Heath Ledger as a kid, Heath Ledger Joker was very hard for me to watch because I'm like, oh wait, no, confused. But
no, I'm not supposed to find him hot. No.
Yeah, exactly. But he is probably one of the best Jokers ever. Dark Knight by far is my favorite of the Nolan movies. Might be my favorite live action Batman movie, honestly. I did not like Dark Knight Rises at all. I couldn't. There was just a couple plot decisions where I'm like, this took me right out of the believability, and now I'm just mad at it, and I just could never get through that third Nolan movie.
And I think it is what we've been talking about, where the Nolan movies were established to be very science-based, and then once you get past that almost scientific uncanny valley, you're like, what? Huh?
Yeah, because it's like, we're super realistic, but then Bruce Wayne loses all his money because of a bunch of stuff that happens in the stock market. I'm like, we have securities for that. If someone broke into the stock market, no trades that happened after that point would count. He wouldn't be broke. That's not how fucking economics work.
Right.
And all I could do was think that. And I couldn't watch the rest of the movie like a straight face. But I will say Dark Knight in the theater got me because I am such a Barbara Gordon Batgirl fan. I totally believe they killed Jim Gordon. And I was livid for about 10 minutes.
I had a moment like that at the end of The Dark Knight Rises when he's trying to get rid of a bomb, which you famously can't do. And
that's right. There's no place in this town to get rid of a bomb.
Yeah. And I remember him flying out over the bay, and I was sitting in the theater, and I remember my jaw just going slack, going, "Oh shit, are they going to do it? What? Like, are they actually going to kill Batman in a movie?" And yeah, that got me.
Okay, last question for the Nolan, specifically for Dark Knight. Maggie Gyllenhaal, actually better than Katie Holmes was in Begins?
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think either of them had really a large enough role that it made a difference who they had as an actor.
I do love me some Joey, being a creek freak, but
I would say Maggie did a better job just because of her ability to the relationship that her character had with Bruce Wayne. Like, I felt like that was I don't know. I just liked that better. Like, she felt confident enough in their friendship to really confront him. Believably.
Her scene with Bruce where he asks, you told me a while ago that if Batman was no longer needed, that we could be together. Is that, did you mean that? And is that still true? I could not imagine that. Like, I remember watching that and being like, can I imagine Katie Holmes delivering this in a way that is this believable?
No.
And I don't think I could.
Maggie Gyllenhaal handles the emotional lifting of that role better, but when she's being like the more upbeat version, it's a very good Katie Holmes impersonation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think they both were brought in for, it ended up working out. They had very different purposes.
Yeah.
I don't think that Maggie Gyllenhaal could have done Batman Begins, that role, as well as Katie Holmes did. I think that they were the right casting for their jobs.
Right. And I think it would have been a different role from the beginning. It would have been a much different role. Okay. And moving off the Nolan. Okay. So I'm not going to turn the last of this into just most of us did not like BVS. I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Harnois because we will be doing a Justice League episode coming up soon where we will be watching the Snyder Cut. I guess it's just what did maybe we not notice or appreciate in BVS from a Batman perspective? I will say when it comes down to it, I'm not a Superman fan. That's pretty well known. I do like Ben Affleck's scenes, the ones that he is in and his performance as Batman. I understand. My issues are strictly with the script.
Well, do you want me to talk about Batman, or do you want me to talk about sort of the idea as a whole, or?
Right. Well, just if there's somebody on the fence and they're like, everybody just because it's very well established that there's a lot of people that just don't like the Batman versus Superman. The ultimate cut or the director's cut came out as well. I've seen the differences, and I'm not even sure that there's that much added that would bring me over. But from a Batman perspective,
sure.
Why
do I like it?
Yes.
Now I will say when I saw this movie the first time, I went and saw it in the theaters, and I was not as completely sold on it as I am now. It is one that I definitely grew to appreciate revisiting it, and especially going back to watch the Ultimate Edition, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the canon version of that movie, because it was what was supposed to get put out. And with the Ultimate Edition, I mean, some of the minor things are some scenes get reordered to make the flow a little bit better, but it also fleshes out Superman's end of things more. So you understand more of why he's like, oh, we need to do something about this lunatic in a mask who's beating people up and, branding them. As far as Batman goes, I mean, there's a couple of things here. This is the oldest Batman we have ever gotten in a movie. He is the most weary. He has been doing this for 20 years, and it's very obvious that he is influenced by the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns Batman. And now, this goes back to something that I had mentioned to you, which is, my notes for this are called Batman movies, or there's a reason it says based on.
Yeah.
So looking at Batman v Superman, and some of this is informed by other people's. It is a movie that has been discussed frequently in the 5 years since it has come out. It is still a hotly debated movie. People still find little things. There, sometimes it's little dialogue Easter eggs. Sometimes it's just stuff they didn't notice before. But one of the things that, because Zack Snyder has been doing a lot of interviews with YouTube streamers, because it's people who genuinely appreciate his movie and want to have, a sort of deeper discussion than you might get with somebody who's just doing a press junket. And so he gets to delve in a little more. And one of the things that he brought up at one point, sort of talking about his Bruce and Batman, is Batman wouldn't do X. Okay, well, if Batman won't do this, what are the circumstances that can push him to do that? And I think the far end of that is the Nightmare timeline, where things are so horribly horrific that Bruce has to basically go against pretty much everything he's ever done. Like, if Batman is walking around toting a machine gun, that's how things got really, really bad. And the Nightmare scene in and of itself is something that we will see more of in Justice League, and something that was going to play out more in furthering movies. Like, there are seeds here that are planted for what was going to be the greater story arc, especially centering around Superman, that at this point we don't know if we're ever going to see. But the couple of things that sort of establish where Bruce is at, at the beginning of the movie, we find out that Bruce is at the Battle of Metropolis, and he sees the destruction that is getting sown by Superman. And right in that moment, and you can see it when he's holding that little girl whose mother has been killed because, Zod ended up taking the roof off a building, you can see that rage in his look in that moment. And that's sort of one of the dominoes that's falling over for Bruce becoming the person that falls in this movie. And the other thing, and you get a tease of it, and again, it's one of those things that was supposed to get, explored later, was Robin got killed by the Joker. Now, Snyder has clarified that the Robin that is dead in this world, and because this is all just alternate universe stuff, the Robin that dies in Snyder's world is Dick. And the main reason for that is, well, you have to consider, and I see Kat's hand flail, part of the thing you have to consider is consider a character like Bucky Barnes. Bucky has been in, 4 or 5 movies now and is doing a TV series, and we're only really getting to probe so much of him in all of that content. So to try to do the 4 major Robins that Bruce has had would take as many movies as pretty much the entire MCU. So some of that is truncating things to streamline it. But also, if there is a Robin that is going to hurt the worst, outside of Damian, who's his own son, but they never get to that point, it's Dick. You kill his son, that is going to be the thing that hurts the worst. You may not agree with that decision, and I understand there are a lot of people who don't. But I understand the point that he's trying to make there. So you have Dick Grayson, who's the dead Robin, and you have old paranoid Dick Bruce reeling his head because he sees this threat that he, at that point, doesn't know how to overcome. And Alfred, has that line when he's talking to him about, you want to go to war, and, you want to go to war, that son of a bitch brought the war to us. And he just sees a threat that he is trying to deal with, and he has fallen so far from what his initial mission is because he's angry. It's, Alfred has that line, the fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel. And at that point, that is where he is. Part of Batman's story here also slots into the overall Superman arc of what was going to happen with Snyder's movies, which is Superman becomes this beacon of hope for partially the other members of the League and the world. Because in this movie, he's still not widely accepted. You see all the protests for him at the Capitol because at this point, he's going out and doing good things, but Lex Luthor has also been making sure that when Superman shows up somewhere in some instances, there's a lot of dead bodies. And so Bruce is seeing all of that because he doesn't understand the greater picture, and all he sees is where this guy goes, people die, and he needs to do something about it. And there's one of the lines he has at the beginning of the movie, which I think speaks to where he is and where Superman ends up at the end. And it's right at the beginning, but he says, "What falls is fallen." And at that point, Superman dies, and Bruce is a fallen hero in a lot of ways. He's not adhering to the code that he would have adhered to 20 years earlier. You can see how many people end up biting it in this movie. And that's sort of the point is, Batman...
What was the body count on this one?
21.
Okay.
And I deferred to the video for that, and the bulk of that is the car chase to go get the kryptonite and people in the warehouse fight. I discount the nightmare scene because that is alternate timeline, extreme circumstance. But the point of Batman's arc in this movie is what he is doing is wrong. And if you're looking at that and going, yeah, he shouldn't be doing any of this. Yeah, exactly. Tony Stark shouldn't have been a warmonger. That was kind of the point of Iron Man. The point of this is Bruce finding his way back to the light and getting inspired again, especially by Superman's example and sacrifice, to pull his head out of his ass and be better. And I have appreciated this movie every time since I have watched it. This is the DCEU movie I have seen the most. And I'm going to watch it again in a couple of weeks because I'm going to do Man of Steel and this before Justice League drops. I hope that all made sense.
No, it did, and it actually gives me motivation that I did not have before to go back and to watch Batman versus Superman, because I enjoy alternate realities. I enjoy Injustice. I enjoy Kingdom Come. A lot of these alternate ideas, I do enjoy that. I enjoy it in Marvel. I enjoy it in DC. How you take these established characters, and if you can't add something to them, make them completely different, but make it non-canonical. And
any movies like this,
non-canonical,
and really any of the movies you look at, that's what they're doing. They all exist in their own little world, and they all play with things in different ways. The Joker didn't kill Bruce's parents except for the Tim Burton universe. Right. And that's the time where they play with that, and people enjoy it. You look at I think the TV show Gotham is a really extreme example of it, of how all of these supervillains are existing to one degree or another before Batman is even a thing.
Right, which is a central theme, though, in a lot of other media, is that Batman begat the the string of supervillains.
Yeah, if it wasn't
for
for this lunatic, we wouldn't have all the other lunatics.
Right. And in Dark Knight, Joker specifically says, it was you that inspired me. Because you started to do your thing, so I started to do my thing.
Well, and speaking to that point, I believe Snyder was doing an interview about Justice League, and the additional photography he got to do for the nightmare sequence, but the scene between Joker and Batman for that is going to be one of those kind of scenes where they're talking about the psychology of the two of them together.
Whew, I still don't know. Leto's going to have to go a long way. But that is something for another
next
show.
month.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. What I'm going to do to end, instead of our normal would you read, because you're one way or another you're going to take in more Batman content. I think all 5 of us.
Yeah.
Are.
I mean, if they come out with more movies, I'll watch more movies.
Right.
Right. There strikes me, I'll go read more Batman comics.
And there's a whole bunch of animated movies to go watch as well, which are really good.
Almost all of them are great.
Oh yeah, they're very good.
And if you do like the Batman animated series, it pretty much was ended in the Arkham trilogy of video.
Oh yeah, the Arkham games are Batman the animated series, the video games.
Yes.
Right.
And then Batman Beyond.
Beyond. But so instead, I'm going to go around and I'm going to say, who is your favorite Batman, Bruce Wayne, whatever you like, your favorite person to have the cowl, to be that persona. You can choose whether or not it's your favorite Bruce Wayne or your favorite Batman. I'm not going to get into the semantics of that, but I will start with you, David.
I mean, I think my t-shirt I'm wearing for the recording probably answers the question. If it's live action, it's Ben Affleck. I thought he did a lot of great. I thought he did a lot of really great stuff. Also, I stand by the fact that he is the most pants-shittingly terrifying physical presence of Batman. Because if that man shows up in a dark alley, you are going to be fucking terrified. Like that scene at the end where he's confronting Lex in the jail cell, and all you get is the red backlight of him just standing there, and you get all 6'4" of Ben Affleck and his brick shithouse build he had for that movie. Like, holy shit. But I mean, then there's also Kevin Conroy, because, I mean, everybody likes Kevin Conroy.
They did do him dirty in Legends of Tomorrow, or in Crisis on Infinite
Oh, Crisis?
But yes.
CW's got a CW.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Kat?
So, overall, Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy is my Batman. If I have to pick live action, while I abhor Batman versus Superman, it was the most miserable 2 hours of my life. I think Ben Affleck will be such a good Batman with a good script. It's like the whole time I'm like, I hate this, but I like what you're doing. I wish you had something to do I didn't hate.
Fingers crossed he gets to do his Batman project for HBO Max.
Yep. And it's, I don't know, Robert Pattinson. We'll see.
I'm intrigued. I'm willing to give him a shot, as he hates Twilight more than you hate Twilight.
I know.
And that gives him bonus points to me anyway.
Yeah.
Jen?
Well, I have to agree. I think Affleck is amazing, but Affleck. the Doc as Batman. But I just Adam West, man. He is Batman. He just is.
All right. There.
If we're talking live action, I gotta go with the Nolan movies. I gotta do
Bale.
Christian Bale. I was trying to remember, like I had his name earlier. I was like, why can't I remember Christian Bale? If we're doing animated, I really liked the Batman from Batman Year One. Ben McKenzie did the voice for him. I just watching that movie last night, I was like, this might be the best Batman thing that I've seen as far as video goes.
It's a good book too.
Yeah.
Well, and if you like the Nolan trilogy, I definitely understand liking Batman Year One, because Batman Begins definitely takes some inspiration from Year One.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, it's oh my god, I just had it. Now it's gone.
Keaton?
No. Animated. Kevin Conroy. Not just because of Batman the Animated Series, but also because he was the voice of Batman through the Arkham games. Mark Hamill also returning famously for the first
Best
two.
ever.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
If we are going to go to live action, I'm probably going to end up with Keaton. Just because, again, he added so much to Returns. There was so much of a presence in his Bruce Wayne that I think a lot of the other actors took. I could very easily see him doing the Bale scene in Batman Begins where Ra's is like confronting him at his birthday party and he acts drunk and basically insults everyone out of his house.
Yeah.
I'm like, he had to have taken that from Keaton's performance. I could see that as a Keaton scene,
right?
You know, as everyone's in danger, what's the quickest way to get everyone out of here? That's a Keaton Bruce Wayne move.
I'm just gonna pull the rich asshole and act drunk and insult everybody, and they'll all just leave.
And I've got no problem doing it. You know. Like, I'm not thinking about the consequences right now. And actually, I think the Michael Gough Alfred would have been a lot more supportive than...
But you had to admit, there was a good line right after that. It's like, what good are all those push-ups for if you can't lift a bloody log?
God, that was so good. Yes. So thank you, Kat, David, for joining us. We'll see you, like we've said, in a little bit for Justice League when we start season 5.
Yay.
Just a little bit of cleanup. This is a mid-season. We'll be back May 7th. We will be alternating with our brand new show, Rec Conversations, which is me and our good friend Leah Cameron breaking down your most confusing or infuriating storylines. Our very first episode will be Civil War, the Marvel storyline, the first one, because we're going to end the season with the second one. Yay. So this is just going to be a lot of torture, but a lot of fun for you guys. So we'll see you back May 7th. In the meantime, if you have questions for us, by all means, send them to graphicallynovel@gmail.com. I'd love to do a mailbag, but nobody ever asks us questions. So, you know.
Are you taunting the audience?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Come at me, bitches. But again, we will see you soon, and take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. Come at me, and I'll show you something you ain't never seen before. Right or wrong, or can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it seems. Do 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 do. You don't want to see